Welcome to the Munro Review, where it's all about connecting, sharing, and valuing the arts in the central San Joaquin Valley. I'm Donald Munro. Today is January 25th, and I'm coming to you from downtown Fresno from the beautiful studios of CMAC. Today we have a packed show with lots of interesting guests. We'll be talking in studio with noted Valley author and farmer Mas Masumoto about his new book. We'll be checking in with two leading actors from Good Company Players, Roger Christensen and Jessica Knotts, who are also in studio to talk about the current titles Singin' in the Rain and Shakespeare in Love. Plus, we preview a special concert at Fresno Pacific University where we went to listen to pianists Karen Madden and Matthew Horton rehearse for their duo piano performance on February 4th as part of the Pacific Artists Series. But first, let's take a look at three of the major stories I've been covering on MunroReview.com. One of the big theater events of January was the National Touring Company of Dear Evan Hansen, which made its premiere at the Soroyan Theater. I interviewed two of the cast members about life on the road in this musical that takes aim at social media. I was out of town for the opening, and guest theater critic Heather Parrish stepped in with an extremely thoughtful and well-written review in which she unpacked some of the more problematic aspects of the plot of the musical. Another big story was a performance by Narek Haknazarian, the acclaimed Armenian cellist who made his debut with the Fresno Philharmonic. His rendition of the San San Cello Concerto was gorgeous. The theme of the concert was flight, and conductor Ray Hatoda and her musicians gave us an incredible and uplifting program, no pun intended, including a masterful performance of The Firebird. Finally, I got around to seeing Matilda the Musical on Netflix. It's one of my favorite Broadway shows, and I love the movie. You can read my 10 reasons why Matilda is a great movie musical online. Now let's get to our first guest. Mas Masumoto is a familiar name on the Valley literary scene and the Peach scene. He's here to talk about his new book titled Secret Harvest. Welcome, Mas.
Thank you very much, Don. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's so wonderful to have you on the show. You have written a number of books in the past. They all have had sort of a memoir feel to it. This one's a little different, though. Tell us why.
This was different because the other books were what I call creative nonfiction, almost approaching topics sort of like a journalist, but also with a creative slant to it. This one was different because it was looking at family secrets. So it probed in a very, very deep way, at times dark and at other times mysterious, but at the same time enlightening. And that's what I think made this book very, very different for me.
So this all started when you got a phone call, and it was from a funeral home. And what did you learn when you picked up that call?
I learned that I had a lost aunt that had become separated from the family. When she was very young, she had gotten meningitis and had a learning disability. And then during World War II, the relocation of Japanese Americans, the family didn't know what to do with her, so she became a ward of the state. She was institutionalized, and the family thought that was the end of it, and they thought she died. 70 years later, I get a phone call from a funeral home in Fresno saying your aunt is alive. And I have to grapple with this whole idea of this family secret coming into our lives with this person who's real and alive.
And the people at the funeral home had tracked you down through an obituary.
Yeah, so it was this classic case of when my dad passed away, you write in, who are the survivors, and my mom, and in parentheses, her maiden name. And that's how this funeral home was able to track down my mom related to this Shizuko Sugimoto. And the story starts forming then as I try to piece together this legacy of the farm and a family.
And you discovered that your aunt was alive and in a local convalescent home, an assisted living home. What was your mother's reaction when you told her the news?
It was this moment where I sat her down and I said, Mom, remember Aunt Shizuko? She goes, oh yeah, she passed away years ago. And I go, take a deep breath. She's alive in Fresno. I went to go meet her and see if in the flesh who she was, and my mom had silence. And I could tell right at that moment there was this rush of emotions, the rush of guilt, a rush of shame, but also this rush of this unbelievable mystery is still alive in our family. So all those emotions came together, and that's what I wanted to try to capture in this book, but not make a judgment on it, because I wasn't there, I didn't understand it. Writing this book made me go back and think, how were people with disabilities treated in the 1920s and the 1930s? I wasn't there when relocation happened. I didn't have to make these tough decisions of what happens with my family, what happens with my possessions. So I didn't want to judge everything, but I did want to piece together this history and try to grapple with, again, these secrets that are part of who we are and define our family.
There were a lot of external circumstances that, like you say, you didn't have to go through and you didn't have to make those decisions. 70 years later, what was it like to meet your aunt?
It was like stepping into the past and understanding that baggage of history we all carry with us. Again, if I was a great fiction writer, I could have wrote a great novel. I don't write fiction, I write nonfiction. So how do you grapple with what we call the truth? And the interesting thing is we often base this idea of what is true or not on facts and figures, when most of the time when you look at especially family histories, there are these big gaps in history. There's this emotional quality that belongs in that legacy of family. And it's that emotional element I wanted to make sure I probed into, because this wasn't about facts and figures again. This was about human conditions, human life, human emotions, and how do you reimagine history, and it makes you understand where we are in the present and where we are in the future too.
Now, when you met your aunt, you thought that she was very close to dying, but she actually had a rebound. And so you actually kind of met her twice. Is that the case?
When we first met her, she was comatose because she had a stroke. And when the family came together, it was in a way a kind of a very nice closure. Because she was comatose, we could give a funeral for her, we could plan for that. Amazingly, her caregivers, who were amazing this whole process that kept her alive, she was in her 90s when she was when I first met her. They kept her alive, they revived her, and she woke up about 3 months later. So I had the second reunion with the past by seeing her alive. And when I first saw her, she was in a wheelchair, she couldn't speak. Of course she didn't recognize me, so I first saw her and I tried to introduce myself, and she looked at me and she kicked me. And she kicked me because she wanted to have her shoe tied. She was feisty like that, and I think that was the spirit that got her through 70 years of institutional care. And the irony, of course, was that wasn't very, quote, Japanesey, to be that aggressive, to be that assertive. And that was another grappling that I had to do with. You know, this idea of the cultural frame I was brought up, and it still exists today, especially in a lot of the rural context, with this more feisty side that allowed her to work through those years of an institutional care.
Now, you make some connections in the book between your family history and also your farm, and sort of that agrarian life. What can you tell us about that?
Everything from, if it wasn't for the fact we still farmed, we would have never made the connection. There would have never been that phone call from the funeral home, because we would have been in some big city or something like that. Secondly, to understand that Shizuko spent her first 19 years of her life on the farm. She didn't go to school. She went out in the fields with my grandparents who were farm workers, and I understood that feeling because I grew up on the farm, and I'd go out and play under the grapevines, roll in the dirt, and it was the whole world for me. And it made me realize farming may have been a way for Shizuko to feel this was her normal life. She wasn't disabled out in the fields. She was natural in that sense. So I re-examined this whole family story, this family legacy, from the theme of what is nature. And in nature, things aren't disabled and wrong and evil and shameful. Nature is, this is life. And I think that's what personified Shizuko, and that's what prompted me to try to write this story, to try to capture who this person was. Because we never had any photograph of her. There was no history of her. She was as if she was invisible, which made me think that's what a lot of disabled people grew up with. They possibly still do now, where they're invisible, and that's the exact opposite of how she survived and also the legacy of our family.
You mentioned the illustrations, and these are beautiful woodcut style illustrations that were done. Tell us about the artist, and then tell us about the art show that's going to come up.
There was this wonderful artist that I worked with, Patricia Wakita, and she does these woodblock prints in a very Japanese style. And it was important because we had no, quote, documentation of what she looked like. It was up to Patricia to try to interpret these different things, you know. And so each chapter has a very significant art piece that's part of the book and helps add to the chapter. She's having an art show on Art Hop on March 2nd with all of her prints, and then of course we'll have the book available at that time too. But you get to meet Patricia, who adds to the story with her artwork on a different level.
And that's at the Downtown Artist Gallery, and that'll be March 2nd, and that's what you're counting as kind of the official launch.
That's what we're calling the book
so
launch.
Obviously there will be copies available.
Yes, yes, and then she'll have some prints, and we did some broadsides too of some of her artwork, because again, it was so important to have this kind of artwork be part of the story, because it's like, I think good art works in a literature, in a book, it helps elevate the story, not just make an illustration.
Yeah, I mean, the illustrations really add kind of an emotional texture.
It adds imagination.
Sure.
Because this history of my aunt is like the history of all our farms. We don't know every detail, so we have to use our imagination to boost our memory, which creates story, and that story makes it all complete.
It must have been exciting for you to go through this process, because it is kind of like a mystery. You were able to learn some things, but there are some things that are always going to be hidden.
One of the amazing things was to realize what you know and what you don't know, and understanding that some things you don't know, it's not like you're supposed to solve it. It's not a problem to be solved, it's a mystery to be lived. And that's what it was like writing this book and probing into our family and asking my mom, my aunt, my uncle some hard questions about things, and then understanding different things. For example, when internment happened, my grandfather was a carpenter, and he made these Japanese Buddhist altars called butsudans. So were they supposed to burn those when they left for the relocation camps? No, they found a good neighbor who stored it for them, and it was an Armenian neighbor. And it made sense because the Armenians understood genocide, they understood trauma that affects family histories, so they cared for this pagan altar for years, and when my family came back, they returned it, and so there was this reunion with the past and the present. That's part of these stories of family that get woven into this.
Well, it sounds like it's a wonderful journey that you've taken, and I know that people are very excited to be able to take that with you. Well, thank you, Mas, again.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Our next story comes from the campus of Fresno Pacific University. Producer Kyle Lowe and I got a chance this week to talk with Matthew Horton and Karen Madden, who will be giving a February 4th concert titled For the Love of Piano. We interviewed them and got to listen to them play in the brand new Campus Performing Arts Center. Here's their story. We are here at Fresno Pacific University at the new Workington Culture and Arts Center, and we are going to be talking with Karen Madden and Matthew Horton about the performance that they're going to be in coming soon. We are here talking with Karen Madden and Matthew Horton, and they are the featured artists at the next Fresno Pacific Artist Series concert, which is February 4th. We'll remind you of that at the end. Thanks for inviting us.
Thanks for being here.
This is a beautiful facility. It's pretty much brand spanking new. Are you excited about?
Yeah, very
being
excited.
able-
It's great for the school, great for the students, and great for the community in Fresno as all.
So how did the two of you decide to do a duo piano concert?
Well, it started at the student summer camp last summer. We played a duet together, and we had so much fun working on it. Karen said, "Hey, let's do a concert." And so we just kept playing over the summer, and so this concert was kind of born out of that.
Yeah.
So before we go on, let's make the distinction between a duet and a duo. Because you're going to be a duo, but you're going to be playing some pieces that were written as duet. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Karen, why don't you tell us?
Sure. So a duet was originally written for one piano and two people sit at it, and a duo is written for two pianos. So a duet, you kind of split the piano in half, and one person takes one half and the other person takes the other half. But duo, both artists play the full range, so you get a lot more power out of two pianos.
So in a duo piece, you'll be sitting on one piano playing kind of the bottom part, and Matt will be sitting at the other piano playing the top.
That would be a duet.
Oh, a duet. Okay.
But
See, I'm already getting
we're playing
okay.
some duo and some duet repertoire, and we've decided we're having so much fun with our two pianos that we're both going to stay at each one.
Okay.
We both want our own pedal, and we have a good time.
Okay. So tell me about the communication between two pianists playing at the same time. Is there eye contact between you? How do you stay in sync?
Well, lots of practice, and a lot of it is after you practice a while together, you kind of know what the next person is doing musically, but then there is some cues with the head, and but a lot of it is just instincts from practicing together a lot. I mean, we learn the notes separately, but then coming together, it's all about the ensemble and making colors together.
So it's like a chamber music sort of vibe where it's your body language, maybe a little bit of eye contact, but just actually kind of the physical presence, and you know what's coming next.
Sure. And we're arranged so that we can see each other, so it's good.
So tell us about one of the pieces that you're going to be doing. What's your favorite, Matt?
My favorite is probably the Rachmaninoff, the Romance, and it has to do with the theme of the concert, love of piano. It's just, I love romantic music and the Russian music, and it's just helps me to get my emotions out, and that's what I love best.
And Karen, what's your favorite?
That is one of my favorites too. We're opening the program with that, and I love it because the interplay between the two pianos, you can never quite tell which one is doing what. They're so seamlessly interwoven as the lines move, so it's a lot of fun.
It's like bringing two orchestras together. I mean, one piano is great, but two is even better. But you're constantly listening to the colors and the different instruments and the lines all mingling together. It's really fascinating.
Now, you both practice apart, or you do a lot of practicing apart, but then you come together to have to kind of hammer out. So no real surprises on concert day, right? It's not like you're going to take the tempo way up, or...
We hope not.
Well, as much as we prepare something, it's nice to have new ideas during a concert because it's always fresh and it should always seem natural. So kind of using our own musical instincts even during the performance. So there could be some new things that we haven't discovered yet.
So, Matt, you are the collaborative pianist
Yes.
at Fresno Pacific,
Yes.
and that's a term that you hear more and more these
Yeah,
days.
it came
Tell
out
us what...
several years ago. I'm an accompanist, but when you work with a singer or another artist, it's more of a duet. There has to be mutual cooperation, and so that term is used more and more nowadays, which is more appropriate.
So you work with the choirs here,
Yes.
with different ensembles.
Yes, the drama department,
The drum.
everybody.
Okay, okay.
And that's what makes him such a fine collaborative duo partner too, because he's so used to listening and collaborating. It's been such a joy to put this program together with him.
Well, we're having so much fun rehearsing together. We're like, we need to share this. So that's one part of the concert, and also to help bring awareness to the building here, and also to thank the donors. Well, we wouldn't be here without the donors or the administration support. So we'd like to thank them.
Well, and when you think about it, if you have a list of job titles that need to be good listeners, a collaborative pianist has to be up there, right? You're probably always just very aware of what other people are.
Yeah, we do a lot
doing.
of listening and nodding.
Okay, okay. And so, Karen, you are a piano professor here, and tell us about your journey
Of course. I am just delighted to be here because I was a student here some decades ago, and so I'm delighted to be carrying on the tradition that my piano professors gave me while I was here. And incidentally, the donors for our piano were my professors, and I'm just so thrilled to be following that. So I teach all of the piano classes here, and work with just wonderful times with the students as they continue their piano journey.
Well, that's wonderful. You know, sometimes people need reminding that Fresno Pacific has such a strong music department, and it's a great place to go and hear great music as well.
We're excited.
So, anything else we should know about the rest of the concert? I understand you have some vocalists who are going to be joining you.
We have 4 fantastic vocalists from the area, and we're really happy to have them joining us for the. So if piano's not your thing, come for the vocalists. It'll be a entertaining concert, so you won't get bored. So if you've never heard a piano concert, I would suggest you come out and turn your TV off for one night and come enjoy live music.
And so, remind us when is the concert again? What time and where is it?
Yeah, so we're here in the Warkentine Culture and Arts Center, and it'll be Saturday, February 4th at 7 p.m. And we'll kick off our 2 pianos and have a wonderful time celebrating a variety of music from a few hundred years.
Well, great. I like your motto, 2 pianos are better than one. Or you could say 2 pianos for the price of one, right?
And there's a nice reception afterwards, too.
Oh, good.
And it looks beautiful at night. It'll be a night concert. The lights on the new building are just gorgeous. It's worth coming out just for that.
Okay. Well, thanks very much. We're looking forward to it.
Thank you.
There are many reasons why this is going to be a special concert, and one of them is that 3 of the major piano benefactors for Fresno Pacific who made all this possible are going to be there, Laurel and Wayne Hubler and Paula Warkentine. Cheers to them for adding to the Fresno area cultural scene. And now, time for our next guests. Jessica Knotts is appearing in Shakespeare in Love at the Second Space Theater. And across the street, Roger Christensen is making his mark in the classic musical Singin' in the Rain. Both are Good Company Players productions. Welcome, GCP people.
Hi.
Thank you for being here. It's kind of fun to do this dual, have both shows that are running at the same time. Usually I'll focus in on one show or the other, but hey, you're part of a company, and it's a great way to get the word out. So, Jessica, tell us what you are playing in Shakespeare in Love, and maybe for those of us who only know the movie, make that connection.
All right, I am playing Viola de Lesseps, and she is the Gwyneth Paltrow role, which I do believe that's the first role Gwyneth Paltrow won an Academy Award for, I believe. She is daughter of a slightly wealthy merchant, not fully upper crust. She loves the theater, and through loving the theater, falls in love with William Shakespeare, and a little bit of chaos ensues.
Okay. And Roger, you play the boss.
I am the boss. I am R.F. Simpson, the head of Monumental Pictures, and we have just been threatened because Warner Brothers has fooled around with something new called some gadget that does sound, and they do a movie that's supposed to be a big flop called The Jazz Singer, but of course it goes not south but north, and we are scrambling to make a sound picture, and so it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of famous songs, and I have my cast is as our temperamental actors like Lena Lamont and Donald Lockwood. What a name,
And there's lots of tap dancing.
There is lots of tap dancing, of which I am allowed to do none of. It is the ultimate fantasy to be in Singing in the Rain, which is a wonderful place to pretend you're in and be the person who does not have to tap dance.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go. So it's interesting that both of these shows are theater pieces that are developed from hit movies. Oftentimes it's the other way around, where the theater piece comes first and then the movie. So Jessica, for those who weren't around or don't remember Shakespeare in Love, it was a huge deal. I mean, Oscars and everything, but it was a giant hit. What are your memories of?
Well, I was 13 when that film came out, which was the perfect age for my girlfriends and I were completely in love, saw it in theaters, had the poster on my wall. Everybody wanted to be Viola. So it's a lot of fun that I actually get to do that after all these years.
And so the story is fictional. It's this sort
With
of
a
suggestion,
lot of truth thrown in. Yeah.
but it uses things that really happen.
Yeah, absolutely, and all of the characters, with the exception of Viola de Lesseps and maybe her father, all of the characters actually existed. All of the players that we use in the show, Shakespeare's players, were Shakespeare's players. Ned Allen, Henslow, who owns the theater, Kit Marlowe, who's a fellow writer and friend. They're all very real people, and a lot of what's happening in the show happened in real life. We suggest a romantic relationship for Shakespeare outside of his marriage, of course, but.
And so seeing the movie, what did it do to you? Did it spark your interest in theater? Do you think it made you want to
It was right around that same
learn
time
English
that
accents?
I had discovered it, but it definitely, it opened up the possibilities of living within stories. It was a story about someone who loved living inside of stories, and I really, really connected with that, especially at that age. And I believe it was the very next year I signed up for my first acting class through the high school. So I guess, yeah, it did kind of have a little bit of an influence that way.
And so the play did come after the movie.
Yes.
Is it pretty faithful to what
Very,
people
very,
remember
very faithful to the film.
in terms of the plot?
Very smart. There's no reason to, don't fix it. If it's not broke, don't fix it. And I think it's a lovely way to introduce people that maybe don't come see theater or don't know live theater. Something they already know, something they already love. They've seen it, they've watched it on television. We'll come see it play out live.
So who plays your love interest then? Who plays Shakespeare?
Augustine Sciappa, and he is fantastic. It's a little different though. He was not alive when the film came out. Aged myself
So
a
kind
little
of a
bit
younger man you've been going for.
But I like that too, because he's not someone that's already in love with the film. He's looking at the script and deciding the story for himself, and he does a beautiful, beautiful job.
And you know, it's funny, sometimes you come away from films, particularly if they're long ago, with just a feeling. And the feeling I have about Shakespeare in Love, it's just such a great romance. There was such great chemistry.
Hope, I think, too. It's a really hopeful story, even though it's different. It's different. It's not a traditional love story, but it's very hopeful, I think, was the feeling that I walk away with most times.
So, Roger, Singing in the Rain, the musical version, the theater version, actually came along long after the movie. But you have a special story to tell about the movie.
The movie came out in 1952, and nobody in this room was alive in 1952 except for me, who was 7 years old and saw it from the balcony of a little theater in Kingsburg Theater. It was in Kingsburg, California. It was the first movie I'd ever seen. And I was just stunned because we didn't have TV until '53. You know, I wasn't raised on images on a tablet to see all this movement and to hear these beautiful songs and stuff. It instantly changed the direction of my life. Almost, it was such an overwhelming moment, you know, and it was very exciting. I became, for 30 years, the theater manager. I loved movies. I loved movie theaters. I loved the idea of people going and sitting in dark movie theaters and laughing and reacting to the screen. I remember the magic of the beam of light coming from the projection booth and in the balcony where it was smoky and kind of, I guess, what we would call noirish today, you know, and all that stuff.
Well, it really does make me think about what that must have been like for you as a kid, because to see those first images,
it was just stunning.
As big as they were.
It truly was magic, you know. And that moment when Gene Kelly puts Debbie Reynolds on takes her into soundstage and puts her on a ladder and turns on the fan and the fog machine and the cyclorama and all those moonlight and stuff, I just thought, what is this place? You know, it was so, I remember getting in trouble after the movie, jumping on the furniture, because that's what I saw them do in the movie. It was just so, but what's wonderful about Singing in the Rain and that wonderful music is that it's about joy. All those songs are just so pure and so joyful. And when you have performers that enjoy performing, it's a real thrill. And we have, you know, Sean Williams is doing the Donald Lockwood role, you know, and lovely Caitlin Dean is singing singing my lucky, you are my lucky star, and we have Maddie Riston doing the hilarious Lena Lamont, you know, and stuff, and
So some really great songs.
Oh, there's wonderful songs
From the 20s.
in it, from the 20s,
Yeah.
actually, because, you know, MGM used those old songs that they had owned and just made a little movie about it, which at the time was a breezy, fun, successful movie, but not considered a serious classic. But as time rolled on, people were like, well, no, it's really good.
So Jessica, do you remember the first movie you saw? I'm trying to remember.
The first film I saw in theaters
In a theater?
was Disney's Beauty and the Beast, actually.
Oh, wow.
Okay. I want to say Bed Knobs and
I
Broomsticks,
love that
maybe.
movie.
I've never seen it.
But
Fantastic.
and it's also interesting, Roger, that Singing in the Rain is actually about technology
Yes.
and about the fact that
It is.
they were all worried because sound was coming.
Absolutely.
How is it going to impact the silent movies? And it just shows that nothing has changed. We're
Yeah.
always freaking out.
We're always freaking out.
You know, the big thing that journalists are freaking out about right now is the artificial intelligence that can write stories. You know, so all of my
As well you
colleagues,
should be.
yes. But I guess what this does also show you is that there is hope. You know, that people adapt. That, you know, things will turn out well in the end. Do you get to see each other's shows when you are both playing at the same time?
No, but I got to go to a dress rehearsal because we opened a little bit after them, and she will get to see our show when her show is done. You know, I can attest it's fabulous.
He's a little biased, though.
But I'm a little biased. I'm a huge fan, and you know, for both of us, both of our shows, it's the beginning of the 50th year at Good Company Players. So
Which
that's
is
a
something
biggie.
we are celebrating all year.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, that's very, very exciting. So remind us, Jessica, how long does Shakespeare run?
Shakespeare in Love runs at Second Space Theater through February 19th. We do performances on Thursday evenings, Friday evenings, Saturday evenings, and Sunday afternoons.
And Roger?
We're also Thursday through Sunday, and we close March 12th.
And, you know, just a pitch for both of these venues, when you go see Shakespeare in Love at Second Space, you are so close
Yes.
to the action. And that is one of the charms.
It really
you know,
is.
That you're
It
not sitting
really is.
way
I
back.
love
And,
the
you know,
Second
Raja
Space.
Ruckus isn't very big either, so you really feel like you're close. And both of these shows seem like happy shows. And
Oh yeah.
I think that's really
We need that
a
right
wonderful
now.
thing.
I think the whole world needs that right
and
now.
it's
well, good.
it's happy times.
Well, thank you both for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Gosh.
Well, that wraps it up for this month's episode of the Munro Review on CMAC. A reminder that if you missed my top 20 list of 2022, which I introduced on my last CMAC show, you'll find it on the homepage. Be sure to keep up online at munroreview.com for previews, giveaways, profiles, reviews, and more. A big thank you to our crew and a thank you to our guests. And for all of you, please keep exploring and supporting the local arts scene. We'll see you next time.